Donald Trump just made his much awaited for Trump Russia announcement, and it's a little taco-ish. We are now considering very serious tariffs at about 100% if we don't have a deal in 50 days or so. Once again, it sounds very kind of classic Trumpian in the tariff world where maybe it's 100% or it'll be something else we decide. Maybe we'll have a deal in 50 days or maybe it'll be more time. We don't know. But this is apparently the very major announcement that we've been waiting for, and we just got it. Now, just to clarify, these are secondary tariffs, which just to, again, remove any kind of clarity issue here. What that means is they're not actually tariffs directly on Russia because we're basically not trading with Russia anyway, so what's the sense of tariffing Russia? So secondary tariffs apply to other countries that trade with the underlying country that you're trying to target. Donald Trump says the countries that trade with Russia would be subject to a 100% tariff. Now, what he also acknowledges is that the Senate, via Lindsey Graham and others, are currently working on a Sanction Russia Act of 2025, and this would include a provision for up to a 500% tariff on imports from countries continuing to purchase Russian oil, gas, uranium, or petrol products. That Sanction Act would be an official act by Congress if it were to pass, and it would give Donald Trump the opportunity to pause these sanctions for up to 180 days with potentially a 180-day extension. So sort of building in a little bit of taco into that bill. Donald Trump was asked, hey, why not just use these Senate tariffs? Why bother doing your own 100% tariffs? Trump says, well, 500 is too much. What's the difference between 100 and 500? At some point, it doesn't matter. And we could do 100 alone, so it's good enough. I actually think that Donald Trump is a little afraid of leveraging that political effort that it would take to get this Sanctioning Russia Act of 2025 passed in a bipartisan manner, because it forces more Republican legislatures, congressmen, senators, whatever, to vote for funding the war in Ukraine and vote for sanctions against Russia, which could potentially be a midterm problem. So I think Trump here suggests, hey, we'll just do it on our own, maybe, unless Putin starts to negotiate again. Now, what's interesting is Donald Trump says he's almost had a deal 4 times with Vladimir Putin. And after every single time that they thought they almost had a deal, it's fallen apart. Donald Trump says the war has to stop, that 5,000 people are dying per day. I'm not sure if he meant to say a week, but even if he meant to say a week, the numbers are quite flawed based on data that we're aware of. Trump argues the numbers are actually not being reported accurately and that the deaths are higher than are being reported. But reported numbers are that we've had about 250,000 deaths, closer to over 1 million casualties, which would include injuries. That would put deaths around 202 per day since the war began, which is obviously a far cry from 5,000 a day. But anything over 0 is obviously problematic and sad because that means, somebody's father, mother, or whatever is potentially dying. It's terrible. So Trump says Ukraine wants peace, and he was sitting with Mark Rutte, who is the secretary of NATO. And he really learned from Trump's interaction in the Oval Office. He bluntly said thank you. So J.D. Vance didn't lean over asking him to say thank you. And bluntly acknowledged that anytime there was something that we had to do, like making sure Ukraine wants peace and making sure the deal with Putin is a deal that's upheld, he was pretty smart to say, we'll make sure of it together. And he kind of leans over convincingly towards Trump like, we're going to make it happen. Optimistic, and we're going to do it together. Cooperatively. Kind of brilliant. I mean, that's almost kind of the way you have to play Trump. So Mark really, he learned from how not to play Trump, which was the Zelensky meeting, right? But that was on public display for everyone to learn from. So anyway, so why 50 more days? Donald Trump responds to a question of why 50 more days and says, oh, that's a very short time. This is Biden's war. But the reality is 50 more days at, Trump's numbers is another 100,000 deaths. 50 more days at current numbers is another 10,000 deaths. That's a lot. That's a lot of dead people. So it is interesting that we're sort of dangling this threat, because I think it's supposed to come across as this really powerful message to Russia that, oh, we're going to send more Patriot batteries, anti-missile and drone defense equipment. We're going to send more missiles to Ukraine. Ukraine's going to pay for it. I'm not sure if this is sort of like Mexico's going to pay for the wall kind of thing, and then they really didn't. And then really the way Trump argued that the Mexican wall was paid for was through tariffs on certain commodities and goods that were being imported from Mexico, and sort of justified like, well, we collected money here, so that basically paid for the wall. I wonder if that's a way of saying, oh, well, the tariffs that we're getting from other countries, that's paying for these weapons. That's unclear. But what Donald Trump does reiterate is, hey, we want to get a deal done. And if we don't get a deal done within 50 days, then we're going to have secondary tariffs. Now, if we had 50 days, let's see, from today. So let's do 50 days from today. It should be, okay, so that would be about September 2nd. So we kind of have another little catalyst on the clock, which is interesting because August 1st is only about 2 weeks away. That's crazy to say. I can't believe we're already in August in 2025. But August, which is also wild because we've got our AI announcement coming up for House Hack, which will be great because we'll probably set a date for ending our fundraise as well, because if our AI work really catches wind the way we think it will, then our valuation, knock on wood, changes substantially. But anyway, so 50 days from today is September 2nd, a Tuesday, which is roughly a month after the August 1st tariffs. So again, more kind of drama in the way of like what dates and what taco, how far are we kicking the can down the road? But he says that Putin knows what a fair deal is, and we have a chance here to get a deal done and make it happen, and hopefully he can through this sort of threat of secondary tariffs. Now, just so you know practically how this would work is you'd basically say, hey, China, your 55% tariffs are going to go to 100% if you keep trading with Russia. Now, I don't think Trump actually really wants to do that, because right now we have guardrails for a 55% tariff on China, and China being willing to export us rare earth minerals for the next 6 months, which is really only about 5 months left. China could potentially U-turn on some of the deals or progress that China is making in the event China ends up getting a 100% tariff. Because remember, it's not Russia that's going to pay the tariff. Russia technically doesn't pay any of the tariffs. It would be countries like India and China. And it's basically sort of U-turning on the progress you potentially have already made, if any, with India and China. I mean, China, a little bit of progress. And really, you're just amplifying the trade war by mixing in another factor, which is now Russia coming to the table. Because the way you could think about it is, if Russia's just stubborn and gets, yeah, whatever, I don't care about the 100% tariffs on China, then we basically double our tariffs on China, and China had nothing to do with it. But, China would end up responding. So part of me also wonders if there is some anxiety now to start supplying these weapons to Ukraine, because maybe not only is Russia getting more aggressive and there's more death happening in Ukraine now than previously, but I wonder if there's some fear that Ukraine is starting to lose. Now, that's speculation. I'm just saying, like, this aggressiveness from Trump all of a sudden potentially comes because of a lack of action over the last 6 months, allowing or enabling Putin to kind of get gains. But it also makes me wonder, like, are our intelligence analysts, basically sending up memos to the top of the CIA brass, who gets on the phone with Trump and says, we're getting effed in Ukraine. You really need to get this done. We don't have a lot of time left. And that's where we're coming up with this bizarro 50% or 50-day-ish tariff, imposition of 100% secondary tariffs. I don't know. I find it very interesting. So somebody writes here, is oil included in the secondary tariff? Well, I mean, oil is actually the precursor to what determines the tariff. So basically, if countries buy oil from Russia, then the countries that buy that oil get 100% tariff. So to answer your question, it's yes. It's just it's like the oil's not getting tariffed 100%. It's anybody who buys the Russian oil gets the 100% tariff. So if Germany is like, we are going to buy Russian oil, then technically German tariffs would go up to 100%. So that BMW would cost you a lot more. That's roughly the way the secondary tariff would work. It's kind of like a derivative. You know, it's like, if this happens to the underlying, this happens to the derivative. This is sort of the way to look at it. Some reports that North Korea offered to send 30,000 additional troops. I saw that as well. Yeah, North Korea is definitely sending a lot of folks to support Russia. Some of them died in Russia when Ukraine was invading a portion of Russia. So then you've got, let's see here. We do pay the tariff, but we buy less of the products. The tariff, somebody else writes, Zelensky is a dictator, in my honest opinion. Let's see. EU is buying Russian LNG through India. Well, I mean, that's sort of an idea, too, is that there's just sort of repackaging of liquefied natural gas and oil through other countries. But again, the idea here is that if India is importing even natural gas, liquefied natural gas in this case, LNG, then you would end up having 100% tariff on India, which we've heard for months now that a trade deal with India is just a week away and it's about to be announced. And it never ends up actually getting announced. So, I don't know. Somebody here writes, you understand no matter what the United States pays the tariff, right? The impact of foreign trade is made on the fall in demand of whatever the consumer. Yeah, I mean, there are many ways you pay for tariffs. They could be corporate margins. They could also be, frankly, just currency adjustments, like the dollar falling can offset some of the impact of tariffs. It could show up in employment. It could show up in some inflation. It could be a mix of all of these things. It's not immediately clear where tariffs end up showing up. So will tariffs go up with? I'm not sure exactly what you're saying, but yeah, basically the idea here is Russia better make a deal in 50 days. Otherwise, we get more tariffs on China, which isn't great, and because China loves the cheap Russian oil, and more commitment from Trump that we're going to get more weapons to Ukraine to sort of help minimize the advancing strength of Russia. So you're trying to hit them in two ways. I think what they're trying to say is over the next 50 days, we're going to show you how much we're supporting Ukraine. It's going to be so much harder for you to make any more progress. Although I do think Putin stepped up his war effort in the void of Trump not sending weapons on purpose. But now they'll ramp up again, as well as try to bring Putin to the negotiating table. I don't know that Putin will care. Like I have a dirty feeling that Putin's going to go, not my problem. I don't care if China has to pay 100% tariff, because see, Putin's kind of like a 4D chess kind of person. He's going to go, if you end up imposing 100% tariffs on India or China for buying our oil, your stock market could fall. And then people are going to be pissed at you, Trump. So I think Putin just has to play a bit of the waiting game. And I'm not trying to, side with Putin. I'm just saying this is what I think Putin would end up doing. That's my take. So we'll see. We will see. But there's one thing that you will always have certainty over. And that is that Kevin will remind you to invest in HouseHack at househack.com and get life insurance in as little as 5 minutes by going to metkevin.com/life. Paid partner of the channel, and it takes just 5 minutes to sign up. You can Apple Pay and Android Pay for it.
Why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.